was already being used on the other
All
call.
right.
Anyway,
How do I sound?
good to me.
Okay, I sound good on live too as well. So we're good. Hey guys, we're coming in. Welcome to the show with consistent audio problems. All right, it is Monday, May 17th. My name is Jim Vassal. Welcome to Competitive Corner. Today, I am joined once again by Alex McDougall. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing good.
So I think we've maintained our streak now of like every show on this channel having some sort of initial audio problems. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping to kind of hit like a 50 show streak at this point. Um, so yeah, very exciting on my part. How's your weekend?
It was good. Played like 3 TTS games, so
Nice.
trying to stay sharp.
What have you been playing these days?
I do weird stuff. I've put GSE back into the D McCarran list and just experimenting.
Mm, nice, nice. All right, so we got lots to talk about this week. I obviously I'm a little bit rough, if you may may see from my appearance. I was out camping this weekend and had a still kind of feeling the pain from that. So if I'm a little slow, I do apologize. Hope everyone that has joined is having had a good weekend. Raymond, how are you? Shane, welcome to the show. All right, so guys, just a reminder: if we do a Q&A at the end of every show, if you want to get a question on the show, how do you do that? Well, really easy. You can leave a comment on today's show or any of our past shows. I always check the comments. We'll leave it on today's show for next week's show. You can join the Deployment Zone TV group, which is at deploymentzone.tv, and we're basically the Netflix of Warhammer. So there's a ton of different content there from guys like Play on Tabletop, from Winter's SEO, etc., including the once every month we do an exclusive episode of Competitive Corner there. That is why you guys did not see an episode last week, because the fourth episode of every month is a Deployment Zone TV exclusive, and there's a Discord with a channel just to ask questions. You can also email duplicitystudentpaintstudio@gmail.com, or you can tune into the show and just ask it live. That's the other way to do it. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is AdMech preview. So Alex, did you get a chance to take a look at the AdMech preview? What are your initial thoughts? Obviously, we did see that it's going on pre-order this week, so finally, all the people complaining about AdMech, actually like a crazy pre-order week for pre-orders this week. Like, there's a lot.
Mhm.
Do you think that's a sign that they're like trying to now catch up? Like things are maybe because I know England started to open up a bit. I know like they did their factory move a few weeks ago. So do you think that's a sign that they're actually starting to open up a bit more, or do you think that was like always the plan?
I hope so. I mean, if I'm trying to give GW credit, my hope is that they just kind of went, okay, we just need to like get our bearings, like get everything ready to go, and then hopefully the rollout starts happening now. Rather than them just like continually like, oh, stumble here, stumble there, and it's just all scattered all over the place. So hopefully we're on our way. If not, I mean, they're trying.
Yeah.
They want to make money, so they know they're going to try and get a product to us.
Yeah, and we're finally seeing the release of the Heavy Intercessors and the stuff from the Kill Team box. When did that box originally come out? Was that in January?
Oh, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And remember it
Yeah,
said soon? They were like shortly thereafter. It's like 4 months.
soon TM.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so AdMech preview, which is always fun to see these previews. Obviously, we're looking at it without context. We obviously are not going to go through it point by point, and if you guys are interested in checking it out, I would definitely check out the article on Warhammer Community. But what are your initial thoughts, Alex? Like, yeah.
I didn't have anything that jumped out at me as being like, you see, sometimes you see something and immediately you're drawn to it. You're like, oh, that's going to be a problem. I didn't catch anything like that.
Hmm.
There's a couple of sentences that were pretty interesting. I'll try and find them again.
Hmm.
I like the Wrath of Mars stratagem being uh, power rating dependent, like 1 CP or 2 CP, depending on the size of the unit.
Yep.
I kind of like that. Pay more for, spamming one gigantic unit. I liked the stratagem for Lucius, which is that you can use it different times, a different number of times, depending on the size of the game. I think
Hmm.
that's also a really good one, where it's like we understand that at different sizes of the game, these things start to become unbalanced.
Right.
So let's just make it to the size of the game, and that way we get around that issue.
Right.
Just little noticeable things like that. I like that they said um, I can't remember which one it was, but it was Styges. Uh, it was not just -1 to be shot at. It was you get the benefit of dense cover,
Yeah,
like rolling the what is essentially the same thing into the actual wording of the game. I like that.
right. So, well, with that specifically though, so for dense cover, there are units that ignore cover. So obviously, if you ignore dense cover, do you think you ignore that as well?
I'd imagine you would, but nothing has anything that says ignore dense cover yet.
Right.
Everything that says ignores cover is old, and they think there's a specific FAQ or an errata somewhere that says if you ignore cover, you just ignore light cover. That's
Hmm.
the only one you actually ignore. So
Yeah. What did you think? And maybe this is just me being a bit salty here, but like, obviously they're getting custom forge rolls, which is cool, which they had in the Psychic Awakening. But they're
mhm.
also getting. I mean, how many forge rolls are there? Six at this point. Six,
Six, which I think
six,
is pretty
six
standard.
basic forge rolls. And then on top of that, they get custom ones. Do you think that, like, I always like to look at kind of what we've seen before, and like, I look at like something like Death Guard, and I'm like, okay, well, they got their plague companies, but there's no custom plague company. And obviously with
Mhm.
NIDS, I know that's something that we did see a little bit of that, right? Custom fleets.
Yeah, they're all trash,
So,
but they
so
existed.
do you think this is like a, and we saw with Dark Eldar, we didn't see it with Necrons, did we? There was no custom dynasties,
No, there's
is
custom
there?
dynasties. The
So,
custom dynasty that Necrons got was the best one. That
okay,
was the one where you get the free movement of 6 inches
okay,
and the double obsec.
cool. So only Death Guard didn't get any custom chapter traits. That's cool. Good to know, guys. Thanks, GW. Yeah, I guess for me, like, it's interesting to see that the Canticles of the Omnissiah for Mars are granted to the Skitarii unit, so that kind of indicates that normally in the new book, Skitarii don't get Canticles naturally,
Mhm.
whereas in current rules they do. I'm also interested that there's an AP5 weapon in there, which I think we don't see that very often. AP5 axe, the Arcana mechanic, the red axe. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, overall, I like these because I feel like, one of the things that I want from custom traits, I guess, overall, is that they do actually change the army build, and they encourage certain types of army builds. So I'm really excited that this is there. I have been eyeing AdMech as a second army, and now that at this point I'm at a place where most of my chaos is done. So I've been eyeing AdMech for as a second army, especially because I can do Dark Mechanicus, which is always fun. Which are evil and chaos, which is my jam. But and then there's also certain things like the adamantine arm. Um, it's like strength times 3, AP3, flat 4 damage. Like that's, and he gets +1 to
Yeah,
hit, but you only get one
that's no
attack.
joke.
Yeah, I mean you only get one attack, but it's still pretty nasty. Um, so yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for AdMech. Do you think that based on these rules so far, is there anything that sticks out to you as far as um, like anything that stands out as far as the best one?
Not really. The Metallica deafening assault is pretty gross. Anything that can affect your opponent's movement is brutal.
Right.
Um, it's close to you, unfortunately, but if you want to sacrifice something and shoot your opponent with some trash, and be like, oh, that unit's screwed now. Um, I do like that. Nothing jumped out at me as like broken again, which is good. I may have missed something. I am not a AdMech expert by any means,
Yeah.
but usually you can pull out the stuff where you're like, okay, that's too much. It looks like a lot of them do play differently too, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like some of them are more combat focused, some of them are more movement focused. Like they're really letting you play kind of the stuff you want. And the number one thing that I was afraid of with AdMech is that they were going to make it just like you just put your robots on the line and your last chickens on the line and just hose your opponent off the board. And it doesn't. I don't really see that too much. Obviously, Mars with your one reroll to hit per turn is pretty gross.
Right. Yeah, it's
But you know, well, it's one per unit though, which actually is not good for the like a 6 pack of last chickens. Because one guy gets to reroll one shot, so that means you're going to split him up, which means the buffs won't be as strong if you're splitting up all your guys. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll be interested to see. I actually thought the custom trait that they previewed, the auto 7 spirit seems really good. Like a free wound every turn and also double characteristics on your damage table, like that seems like really
Mm,
good for a secondary, to be honest.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's usually like what is it? House Crast? Or what is the night house that has that just naturally? Like that's their whole trait is the double wounds. Or it's always
Uranus,
or maybe
maybe?
there's like stratagems that do that. Essentially is getting a
Yeah.
free stratagem. So
That's
now
what Iron
to be
Hands
fair,
have.
there's not a ton of admech vehicles. I think the planes, maybe the boats have the degrading stat line. There's not a ton. They're not like they're vehicle heavy, but their vehicles are much smaller, right? Like they got the robots and
Yeah.
the Johnny Five guys. That's what I call them. From Short
Yeah.
Circuit. If
A lot
anyone's
of
seen
times
if
they're
anyone's old and seen Short Circuit movies, you'll know what I'm talking about.
yeah, a lot of them are either like at top bracket or dead.
Yeah,
There's not really a whole lot of in between.
yeah,
But I mean, getting wounds back is always pretty interesting,
absolutely.
especially when it is at a wound bracket. Like if you're at 3 and then you gain back up to 4 and hop up a bracket again.
Yeah. All right. We also had a little bit of previews for this new orc character. I believe his name is something very weird to pronounce. Um, Zodgrod Wartsnaga. So this is a brand new model that they previewed from the Beast Nagas. What do you think of the model, first of all?
I love the model.
Yeah, that's a cool model. I think it's like I like that he's like pretty beat. He looks pretty beat up. Like he's got like a mechanical leg and like a
Yeah.
bandage on his other leg. So I like him. Now one of the things I did want to call out to this. Well, first of all, he buffs Gretchen, which I think is really interesting, because like generally Gretchen, like even in unit 30, usually just disappears in one turn. So he can buff one unit of Gretchen, which I think is interesting. Um, but one of the things that they are featuring here is, and I think, and you had mentioned that we had seen this before in pre-show, but the ability of units to do an action while also doing something else. So in this case, the Grots can shoot and the unit can still perform an action. Do you think this is something that we should be seeing more of? Because I kind of feel like the way that the game is going right now, like there's a lot of like units that just don't do stuff. Like they're put in the list for actions. Do you like the action mechanic as it is in kind of competitive? Do you think it's something that maybe they should be having more ways to do other things without actions? Because I actually just feel like the mechanic in general, it's like I don't like the mechanic personally.
Okay. I really like the mechanic because I like that the game is about like a quantity of options that you can do, a quantity of like limited you have limited resources, and it's interesting to me to consume a resource of a unit not fighting but doing an action. I do think that's an interesting mechanic.
Right.
But I think the armies that should be getting stuff like this are the armies that can't create super cheap units. Like I kind of get it on Marines, where like the
Right.
cheapest thing you can possibly have in your army is like 85 points, whereas I can do that for like 20 as Tyranids.
Right.
So that's a much smaller sacrifice for me. An army like Orcs, where you can probably have like 5-man commando units running around for like 50 points or whatever, probably don't need something like this. But I also understand that they have to buff Gretchen because there's nothing in the game that's less than 5 points. And I think that was just GW's thought of like, to take up space, like to exist, you must be 5 points.
Right.
But as bad as like Termagants are, they're still way the hell better than
How
Gretchen,
much are
and they're the
Termagants?
same
5 points.
points. Five
Yeah.
points. So for 5 points, you get +1 strength, +1 toughness, a better gun, and I guess that's about it. But still, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like the identical points, better movement, like that's way better for the exact same number of points.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm of the mind that like I kind of wish it wasn't as restricting. I don't mind it full. I don't hate the act mechanic. I just wish, for instance, like it was like either move or perform the action. Like if you say don't move, you can perform an action and one other thing in another phase, or
Mm,
like if you perform like you can still do one thing in one phase. Like maybe you move, but then you can't. Not, yeah, you just have to kind of pick which phase you can operate in. So if you
yeah.
move you can't perform anything else besides an action. Or if you don't
Mhm.
move, you can perform an action and then like either shoot or fight in close combat. But like you can't.
Yeah, if you were already there.
Yeah, but like you can't. You know what I'm saying? Just I just wish there's a little bit more flexibility in it because of the it. I don't. I guess I just don't like the idea that I'm including units for the sole purpose of doing nothing.
Mhm.
It just feels doesn't feel great. And then one other thing that we saw is he's obviously got this weapon called the Squig Slappa. Now this makes a unit fight last, specifically a monster unit within 6 inches. Now we've seen a big prevalence or increase in the like fight last ability. So I believe in 8th edition, the only things that really had fight last were the Vexator Mask from Dark Elves, and then maybe the Death Guard Foul Blight Spawn at one point. I think there's maybe one more thing, but it was very, very rare.
Yeah, Nids had a spell.
And Nids had a
Paroxysm.
spell.
Yeah,
But now we're seeing it. We've seen it
which
almost.
doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, we've seen it in almost every army, haven't we? I mean, Space Marines have it with the Whirlwind. I'm not sure if Necrons have an ability to do it.
Space Wolves have it.
Space Wolves have it. Well,
Dark Eldar have multiple versions of it,
yeah,
like 3 or 4.
Death Guard have it. Orcs will have it
Mhm.
in some form. So this is becoming a more prevalent mechanic. Do you think this is like what do you think the end game is here for, like, you know, because I personally feel like I kind of don't like that there's so much of this, um, especially because of the fact that like the way that they switched up the order of activations, charging is just doesn't seem as strong anymore. You know, especially with like between the interrupt and the fact that like a lot of things can fight out of order. A lot of things are getting fight first. It just seems like charging in general is losing a lot of its appeal. Not that it's still not good, but it just feels like it's a lot less important than it was in 8th edition.
Mm-hmm. Um, I kind of like some of these. I like them when they've got like this. I mean, I guess they all like this, but I like them when they're on a specific model and it's like it's restricted, because that means I can go like, okay, well, I can't charge him, but I can charge like something 6.1 inches away, miss this Squig Stoppa, and then pile in. Like, it rewards good placement and it rewards like thinking ahead. I don't like it when it's on like half an army, like Dark Eldar. But like I said in the pre-show as well, I would just wish they would bring back initiative.
Yeah.
I do think, because okay, so the other thing that I don't like the stratagem to interrupt at all.
Right.
It just seems like this brain dead, like, oh, I got myself in a bad situation. It's like a bailout button. So I kind of wish that they either didn't have that, or it was like once per game maybe. Uh, and with this, like, this is more controlled. Like, we see where things can actually be slowed down, and we get to play around that rather than just going, well, I'll charge everything, and I guess at some point you're just going to interrupt me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess the reason I don't like it is it feels like it really, especially the fight last, when there's multiples like Dark Eldar, and I know we always complain about Dark Eldar, but I guess
Mm.
the reason I don't love it is because what I find is it removes a lot of player agency. Like where, like, you know, the ability to say for, and the fact that interrupt doesn't actually work on it, I don't like, because one of the most important questions that happens every combat phase is should you interrupt and where, right? Like if you get multi-charged, the question of like who to interrupt with, which unit, and where, I actually think is a very important question when it comes to like high level play. Like, do you interrupt with this unit? Does that let you pile in and tag something so that it can't do its thing? Do you interrupt over here and try to kill something before it gets killed? Like that always becomes, for me, that was always like a very like interesting question in the combat phase, is like where and when to interrupt if you were going to interrupt. And now, because of this, the way that these fight lasts are worded and they're sprinkled everywhere, that really takes away that option. You're just like, well, there's like 2 of the 3 combats my units are fighting last, so my interrupt is limited to like this one other combat, which doesn't really matter. So it just kind of removes that ability for me to like kind of outplay my opponent because they can just make me fight last.
Yeah, I definitely can see both sides. Usually, again, I like it to be more, the more choices, the better. Choices create good plays and bad plays and mistakes and rewarding um, good decisions. Like, it feels good when you get the really nice, like, yeah, that was the right call. Because sometimes it's not the obvious one. It's not like I will pick next strongest unit to fight with. It's like, no, this tank over here is gonna like pivot around and grab something and like screw with their movement, and that
Right.
always feels really good as a player.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, my issue with interrupt is just that it always felt like a bailout for like mediocre plays. Like, oh, didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. Here's 2 CP. Screw
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would like all combat armies to have one,
Right.
but again, like really restrictive. One relic. It's only a 6 inch or 3 inch range. When it gets army wide, like Dark Eldar have, that's when it becomes unfun.
Yeah.
Like, what do I charge? Nothing, because they're all gonna swing before me.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, I also think too, like and like the reverse of what I said is true, which is like I think when your opponent has interrupt, it also makes you think a lot better. Like it adds a layer of complexity, like where you start your fights. I kind of feel like when you have all these fight last things and you charge a bunch of units, it just kind of makes it brain dead. Like you don't have to really think about where to fight. You just kind of do. You're like, well, these have to fight last, so it doesn't really matter. I don't like that. I want there to be more. I like that like kind of meta game of like which unit to fight first because you know they're going to interrupt, and that could actually change the swing of the game, right? If you pick the wrong choice there, that can cause issues. So we'll see. We'll see how many of these orcs have if it's just the one or
I might be coming from a place of bitterness as a Tyranid
yeah.
player, where like I am the one charging like 8 times, and I've synced all of these charges up because I'm faster, and then they're just like, nah, we don't care.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know. I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but big announcement from Games Workshop as well is that their in-person events are coming back. Now, I don't know if you've read this article, but it brings up a lot of questions for me. And I guess first of all, are you excited that we haven't seen anything in Canada announced, which I doubt we'll actually get ever. But as far as the roadshow, the Warhammer Roadshow, so it's going to be a series of Warhammer tournaments hosted across North America. First events will take place in Orlando, New Orleans, Austin, which is predictable that it'd be in the South where COVID restrictions have been lifted. And they're already pumping up the venues, and they're not telling us where they're going to be, and they're not telling us the dates, which for me is the most important part of any sort of event announcement. So like I thought the announcement was a little bit odd. It's like, hey, you won't tell us where they are outside the city and you won't tell us the dates. Like you obviously know the dates because generally you're booking these venues, you've already booked the venue, right? So I just thought it was really odd that they didn't know the dates. But one of the things that I think about with this is, first of all, um like what is the rules pack going to be? Are we going to be playing Games Workshop like straight GT missions? Are they gonna have table mats? Are they gonna use what's the train gonna be like? What are we gonna submit army lists? Like how like all these kinds of questions, things that like here's the thing. I don't know what the last Games Workshop tournament you ever went to. I think for me it was the Calgary, maybe the Seattle Grand Tournament or the Calgary Grand Tournament in like 2003. And back then,
Oh,
yeah, this is like
that's a long time
that.
ago.
Well, that was like, or maybe 2005 around then. Like it was early 2000s was when GW still ran events. They've been out of the event game for a long time. And back then we didn't have BCP, we didn't have we didn't have ITC, we didn't have table mats. The train was, I played Warhammer Fantasy back then, so like the whole tournament scene was very different back then, right? And now we've come to appreciate our creature comforts, right? Our neoprene mats and our BCP and like all this stuff. So what do you think this is going to look like? And yeah,
I mean, it's kind of strange. Like, we're definitely going to be using battle mats for sure. I'm sure that's not going to be going away.
but from
If it's
where? So like where are they going to come from? Because Games Workshop doesn't make them.
Well, the thing is, I don't think that this is a Warhammer event. Like GW is putting something on. I think this is going to be like they've got the Adepticon thing right there on the
Right.
page, right? I think this is going to be tournaments that are just already in existence, things that people are already running, and GW is just going to like sponsor it and attach their name to it
Hmm.
and be like, hey, it's a GW event now. I don't think that's going to be like them running the show. I think that's going to be like a partnership because I mean, if I'm being honest, I just don't think they need to. Like, why would they put all their money into this and come across the ocean and do this when they could just say, like, we'll send 3 or 4 reps like we do for LVO,
Right.
and you guys can run it, and we'll just be there.
Well, so to the counterpoint is that the finals. So there's going to be basically the way they've mentioned it is that um it's going to be a series of events. Uh, and there's gonna be a finals, and then the finals will be taking place in the new Warhammer store and cafe in Los Angeles. So it'll actually be in a Warhammer store, right?
Okay.
Now, I I didn't get that impression that these are going to be like third parties facilitating these events. Like from my impression, it was that Games Workshop is going to be hosting these events, like the old Grand Tournaments or like the ones that they have at Warhammer World, right? Because they have tournaments
Mhm.
there. But I guess like yeah, like do you think that we're going to see like just garbage train and garbage tables and like people handing in paper army lists? Like I kind of feel like Games Workshop is probably so hesitant to um use like they're not going to use best coast pairings, right? Because that's a third party app. I bet you they're going to have some like like archaic system. Are we going to have to submit lists from the Warhammer app, right? Like oh my god, if that's
Yeah,
the case, like in
and
war
you know what's really bad
what
is you know who's not gonna go if BCP isn't involved and this isn't ranking for the ITC? Fucking no one.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Like there'll be a lot of people that want to go that are excited about it, but you won't see like all the people that you would expect at a tournament normally. Like, do you think Sean Naden's gonna come down from fucking wherever the hell he is in the north down to there for a tournament that does not affect ITC at all?
Yeah.
No.
Well, this is kind of what I was saying in some previous day, but I actually think really strongly that GW should actually create their own ranking system with achievements, like a leaderboard that's hosted on Warhammer Community, where it's like a 40K or Age of Sigmar leaderboard. Could have all sorts of scores. You could have things like painting scores, like a painting leaderboard. Like basically take the ITC, rebrand it, and obviously you can use a whole new system of maybe even ELO ratings, like we talked about, or Glyco ratings. um Put it on your site, like just like I can go to like I used to play EverQuest 2, and if you play World of Warcraft or any other like Call of Duty or League of Legends, guess what, you can go and look at ranks of players, you can look at their achievements, you can look at what they've like their player profiles. Like that's such a cool part and engaging part of competitive sports, esports, quote unquote. So having something
Mhm.
like that for Warhammer, I think would actually be really cool, is if GW created their own, like kind of essentially their own league, and then you were able to kind of have those things kind of in tandem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's the part of me that thinks um, I kind of want it to continue just to be like the ITC
Yep.
because it's what I've been doing forever. And I certainly don't want to have to compete in both. I do not want to have to go to separate events that are like, oh, this is for my Warhammer score and this is for my ITC score. I
Right.
will continue to choose the ITC if that's the case. Um, but it would be cool to have that kind of ranking system.
Yeah,
I mean,
and then it begs the question, like, what if one of the GW official, are they going to have official judges? Are they going to have paid judges? What if one of them makes a ruling? Does that become official GW ruling?
and they've made rulings in the past. We've chosen to ignore it.
Right, but like again, we haven't had like Games Workshop run tournaments in the modern day, essentially. So it just
No,
begs.
we have.
So look. First of all, I'm excited about it. I hope, and I assume Mike Brandt. This is kind of Mike Brandt's project and what he's been kind of brewing. He obviously ran Nova. Now Mike Brandt knows how to run events. He's a very like obviously Nova's a great event. He's a competitive player, so he knows, like, he has that like instinct of not to run a crappy event. So I'm really hoping that if he is the one that's, they haven't actually said it's Mike Brandt, but he's supposed to be the events guy, so I assume that's him. But I'm just really hoping that he's like, hey, Ivory Tower Games Workshop, we need to have some sort of like thing to submit lists. We need to have like mats. Actually, I'm really surprised Games Workshop doesn't make their own mats.
Yeah.
Like, and they don't even have to make them themselves. They could probably just license a company, just like they license some of the train to China, right? And get those
Hmm.
mats and sell them through GamesWorkshop.com, because people would love that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. People even buy their dice, and their dice are almost universally terrible.
Yeah, and they're like, I see people Games Workshop tape measures,
Unreadable.
which are like 17 times the price of a normal tape measure and like 5 times as fragile. I'm like, you can go get like 30 tape measures from the hardware store for the same price as one Games Workshop tape measure. But people like that stuff. Or remember the combat
Yeah.
gauge?
Oh, dude, do you remember the whippy sticks?
Yeah,
The 18-inch long,
yeah,
little tiny
exactly.
red measuring sticks that were horrible.
So I'm really interested to see. I'm really interested to see who what these tournaments look like, and don't get me wrong, I'm wishing them the best. Like, I want these tournaments to be awesome. I want them to be very successful. I want them to be popular, because if they are successful, that means we get more of them, right?
Yeah.
And that means Games Workshop maybe starts to stop hating the competitive scene so much. Well, they don't hate it that much, but I just hope that they start paying a bit more attention. But we'll see. We'll see. It begs a lot of questions, is all I'll say. I just hope to God we don't have to use the Warhammer app, because it is a piece of garbage, unequivocally. Uh, Not just from, like, look, I would probably actually use it if I could do it on my desktop. The fact that I can't use my PC with my mouse and keyboard to build army lists, and I have to use it on a freaking 3.5-inch phone screen, it's just inexcusable. Like, why would you make? Yeah, I don't know what people's obsession with phones are. I literally never play games on my phone or do anything except like text and like make calls and like social media. But I just, yeah.
Yeah, I'm an adult. I have a computer. Why would I be gaming on my phone?
Yeah, I know exactly. Or like, yeah, or like your console, or a computer. All right. Anyways, that's enough. So looking forward to Games Workshop's Roadshow. Although Roadshow sounds also like it's meant for old people. I don't know why they picked such an awful name. Like I just think Antiques Roadshow is a bunch of
Yeah,
like geriatrics going around showing off their like old like car collection and stuff. I'm like, it's literally the least exciting like name for something of Roadshow.
yeah.
But I do hope it's just Mike Brandt driving around across America in like a with like a U-Haul trailer full of terrain and mats playing and terrain, and then they just live blog it. All right, let's get into questions. So, um, our first question. By the way, guys, now would be the time to throw some questions into live chat if you guys are here. So feel free to leave your questions in the live chat now, and we will get to them. But let's start with some questions from the Discord. So Demogorgon asks, on the subject of leaves and making it fair to all, to really level the playing field, how would you feel about set army lists, factions for each player to use? Will this help manage meta chasers and codex balance issues? Alex, do you want to let me know what you think?
I mean that all depends on what kind of league you're playing. I mean, most of the time, leagues I think are considered less competitive. You just got to let people know coming in what they're supposed to be up against. Like, hey, this league is for fun. We are starting at 500 points, so new players can get in. And yeah, I don't think you have to like set armies, but you can certainly talk to the better players in your area and be like, hey, bring some memes. Don't bring soul crushing lists. Um, but if it's a league that's like supposed to be competitive, nah, bring whatever you want.
Yeah, I personally don't like anything set, like especially in leagues. For me the purpose of a league is to really encourage play, is to create basically a formal structure around like casual, like encouraging more regular gaming, right? Like um it's not meant to be this like super competitive thing. And a part of what I like about leagues is that it's essentially just like a framework to help arrange games at the end of the day for me. And in that sense, I like the idea that like as I play through this league, like um I'm gonna like change lists. I'm gonna potentially like try out new things. I'm gonna be painting during the league, so I might add new units to my list. So that whole point of like growing your army and changing your army and trying out new things, and it being basically a kind of like a place where there's not a lot of pressure to compete, but you get to play with different stuff and try out something. I really like that. And look, at the end of the day, because it's a league, I don't think you really need to level the playing field at all. I think your people that are good will be known, and yeah, like something that is important for people that aren't maybe at a high level playing is that they do play really hard lists and they do play really good players and they lose those games and they learn from them. That's a big part of I'd much rather lose to a good player in a league than I would in a tournament, right? And the learning game should come there. So I think by having people play like fake lists, basically, it's not gonna help. Someone asks, this is Awful Gamer. He asks, if you were to run Havocs in the current meta, would all Reaper chain cannons be the best choice? Um, I don't. I actually like the Reaper chain cannons, but I honestly just don't think Havocs are good. So my first suggestion is just don't run Havocs. There's better shooting that you can put into Space Marines than Havocs. The problem with Havocs is that they're one wound still, don't forget, and their max unit size is 5. So you get 5 models that die very, very fast.
It wasn't the buffs to Havocs like T5 or something.
That's right. So and
Did they ignore the movement
yeah,
penalty?
so they have stabilizing talons, I believe is the name of the rule. And that essentially allows them to move and shoot without penalty, which is great. But they also and they also went up to T5, which is cool, but like T5 1 wound is still not good. So the fact that you can
Yeah,
only have 5 of them means that literally the ratio the speed at which that whole unit gets wiped is like almost instant, right? And they only have 3+ saves, no invulnerables or anything like that. So for me, just
yeah.
Havocs are just not competitive. Now, once they go up to 2 wounds, right? Or if they are able to add additional models, then we're
Two
talking.
wounds
2
T5.
wounds
Yeah,
C5, we're talking, right? Um, but just right now, given the state of them, I wouldn't run them at all. Now,
yeah.
so yeah, go ahead.
I just went and looked at Mark Perry's list because I know Perry runs uh, to kind of the beat of his own drum. I thought maybe he had included Havocs, but he includes Noise Marines,
Yeah,
which is a whole different beast.
right, and they're a lot cheaper too.
Yeah, just better guns.
All right, let's take a question from the chat. Deuce Deuce 0083 asks, One thing that exciting to me with GW units is the prospect of standardized terrain. Thoughts?
Um, I don't know. I've always thought the GW train is kind of weird. They like, I mean, I'll credit where credit is due. They fixed their own terrain by giving the obscuring rule. And that was literally them suddenly realizing, like, oh, gun lines are broken on all of our terrain because you can hit anything forever. Um, so obscuring kind of solved that. But as far as the quantity, um, somewhere nearing like WTC terrain would be nice.
Yeah, look, I'm excited for standardized terrain, but you're assuming that GW events will have standardized terrain. So I think that's your fatal mistake, Deuce. I don't think anything about the GW events will be standardized. I think it'll be like just well, so a perfect example is look at the Warzone Cardon terrain set that they previewed in the GW preview. It's like a bunch of pipes, some weird round reactor things, and then like a single bigger pipe wall. Like that terrain on a table would be completely pointless and like not functional. So
Yeah,
if these GW terrain, sorry, if these GW tables are going to use Games Workshop terrain, right? Like I assume what they'll do is they're just going to send whoever's running these things 30,000 of their train kits, their plastic train kits. And we've seen the only times we've seen decent terrain is like at Nova. I know they have like the big like GW Gothic runes, which I actually don't even think that they're making anymore. Um like those kind of Gothic runes, the big ones. Hey kitty. Um so sorry, I'm distracted by the cat. So I definitely don't think that we're going to see standardized terrain. And if we do, it'll be standardized Games Workshop terrain, which is basically universally not great because it's like
yeah,
pipes, and like weird things that aren't actually functional. They're just cool looking.
yeah. That terrain was so sparse. Like even Tau would have a good win rate on that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's take another question from the Discord. So, blah, blah. Night Tyrant Proponent asks, do the top players have notable strengths and weaknesses compared to each other? Might might one be better at list building the other at team choices? I mean, GW seems to think so. I don't know if you saw their like meta. I think their meta watch articles with like the like
The
the
stats.
little stat bars that made me really laugh. I'm like, what
Uh,
is this like NHL '95 where they have like
no,
the
no, no, no. It's the Marvel Universe like power grid.
yeah
That's what it is. It's like the Hulk is this durable and this strong and has this fighting ability. It was those
yeah.
for
So
players.
I mean, I'm sure there are things that some players are good at that are better. I don't know how noticeable they are. Like I don't know if you can kind of map them onto a graph like GW seems to have done. Um, but you know, there's definitely players that I'd say like Mark Perry, like you mentioned, is probably a good example of someone that is very um kind of versatile in his list building. Like he has very unique approach to list building. Someone like Richard Siegler, he might be, he's a very strong technical player, I guess. Like he's very good, like very precise, very technical, and very patient. So there's definitely things that I could say about certain players to describe, and it probably relate more to like their personality and like overall
Yeah,
ability.
who
That
are patient, who are aggressive, who are yeah.
yeah, Nick. I mean, he's drunk, so um, but yeah. So yeah, but and there's definitely players that are better at list building, right? Like I could
Yeah.
probably be better at list building. I'm just very lazy, so I like to let other people. And plus, I'm not playing right now. Um, yeah. Sword Brother Plant asks, what faction, if any, regardless of strength in the meta, do you always dread facing across the table?
Um, I mean, as a turned player playing mostly combat, I've always disliked playing against Tau because for me to play the game, I get to activate their Overwatch again and again. For me, it's always just been like pure gun lines. Um, I just they always seem to be like the most coin flippy of a game. Do they go first? How is the terrain? You might just get completely blown out without really any kind of decision making along the way. Um, other than that, no.
Yeah. I hate playing Harlequins just because they're just so janky. And like I like look, I like to play a game where when I look at the table and I see where things are, I can reasonably predict where they will be in a turn or two turns. And with Harlequins, it's like they go in 360. They move in 360 degrees. So there's no way to like move block them. You can't stop them in combat. They can jump over you. They can fall back over you. Like they can just be everywhere. So I just always feel like on edge that I don't know what's happening until it happens, right? Like it's very unpredictable. And
Mhm.
they have a lot of stratagems like between fire and fade and like all this other stuff. The blitz, sometimes solitaire, like I feel like I have to play very defensive and cagey and just kind of wait for them to come to me. And I don't like that kind of play. I don't like it when I kind of feel like I have to like hide everything in a big ball.
Yeah.
So, all right. Night Tyrant for poem. This is probably meant for Alex. Which faction are you always trying to make viable, even when you probably shouldn't?
Gene Stealer Cult, baby.
Yeah.
Or Tyranids. I mean, Tyranids have had low points and high-ish points. GSC has been like feast or famine.
Yeah.
They came out and they were nuts, and then GW went, nope, none of that shit, and then just nerfed them into the ground repeatedly, and they're still just like just such a pain in the ass to play.
I saw there's a question for you, Alex, in here. Let me see if I can find it. All right. So while we wait, Shane has a question from chat. Dreadlord7476. He says, now vaccination is speed up and Attack X might actually be a go. How excited are you two?
Oh man, Attack X is that's my event. I'm super excited for it again. I hope it happens. I've got my vaccine in 6 days, so
Nice.
yeah.
I'm like excited to play at an event, regardless of like what it is. I feel
Yeah.
like I don't know. I just feel like it's it's been so long. Um, yeah, it just
Yeah.
feels
I'll even
like
take an RTT at this point.
yeah. I found the question for you, Alex. I'm like look. I'm just excited to see people. Like I don't care if it's Attack X. I don't care if it's like anything else. It just feels like it's been so long, and that like that it's hard. I'm gonna get emotional, but basically I'm just excited to get back to events. I hope Attack X happens. Like although vaccines are moving along, I think it's meant for October at the current rate.
Yeah, potentially.
So that's still still a chance like events are going to be fairly restricted then. Like we don't know, right? Even though vaccines are moving, the second shot is the most important. Like we still a lot of people don't have the second shot up in Canada. And even if they do, there might still be a lag period. Like even if everyone gets their say first or second shot by say September, which is not I don't think realistic because they're saying it'll be like July just for the first shot. There might be like a 2 or 3 month like a month lag period before they actually open everything up, just like California. So it's not necessarily a go. So I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm gonna continue playing and honing my skills. All right. So we got one here. Question for I guess myself. So how do you, on average, use Death Shroud in games? Do you deep strike them, or uh, deep strike them, or hide them and walk up? This is from Devin Cruccio. Second, so I'll answer that first. So generally with Death Shroud, I usually start them on the table. If I have one larger unit, I'll usually start them on the table. If I have, I usually run more than one unit though, in which case I'll usually deep strike one and keep one on the table. The thing is with Death Guard, you don't have a lot of other units that are like your main infantry combat units. So if you deep strike them all and someone has a fairly fast army, um, they can kind of get onto you and move like block out your deep strikes to bring them in. And then all of a sudden, like, what do you have on the table? You just have characters and poxwalkers basically, and then maybe a few vehicles. So then you're in a situation where you don't have anything to kind of counter. So I always like to usually start. I usually run at least 2 units in my games, and generally I'll start one or both on the table. That way they can threaten kind of mid board early, like by turn 2. And then I'm also not worried about someone coming in with like faster elements and blocking off deep strike. Now the second question is and also terrain matters too, right? Like if it's a super open table, I might um I might deep strike them. If it's a fairly restricted table with lots of terrain, I might keep them on the board. And then how do I deploy versus Drukhari? Again, it's just a really hard question to answer because things that matter are terrain, matters their list, it matters the table, but generally the thing to understand is Darklands, a single Darklands shot kills a single Death Shroud instantly. So you just got to be careful not to leave them too exposed, and let the Drukhari get too many Darklands shots on you because literally the 5 or 6 raiders that Drukhari usually run can wipe out a whole unit of Death Shroud in a single shooting phase. If your saves go a little bit off, it's not not typical, but even losing 2 Death Shot a turn to Dark Lances means that by turn 2, your unit's basically gone. So you just got to be really smart about how you deploy against them. All right, and then last call for questions in the chat. Before Blanks has a final question. He says, one for Alex McDougall. What changes would you like to see the profiles of Gene Stealers, Warriors, and Raveners to make them viable competitively?
I just want more output, if I'm being entirely honest. I don't need them to be that much more durable. I don't think Gene Stealers need to go to like 2 wounds or something. But I think the Broodlord giving out a different buff than +1 to hit would be nice. And maybe like Adrenal Glands and Toxin Sacs. Maybe Toxin Sacs is just damage 2 now. And maybe it gets cheaper as you get more, like a bigger unit or something. Or it's like, it's 20 points for a unit of Gene Stealers to take Toxin Sacs, so it's only really worthwhile when you take a bigger squad or something. And then Warriors and Raveners, same thing. I think at this point, 17 points for a 3 wound, 4+ armor save warrior is fine. I just wish that their weapons were a little better. As right now, they have like a shitty power sword, and that's it. Or Scything Talons, where you get lots of attacks, but they don't do anything. It'd be nice to have warriors on the board, and people go, "Ooh, those can actually kill me." Because right now, people are like, they take up space, whatever.
Yeah, that's I mean, I hope Tyranids get a full rewrite in a lot of ways, because it seems like they have a
Yeah,
lot of good stuff in there, but it just feels like, I don't know, they're not scary. There should be like, I don't know, when you read the background, Tyranids are like the scariest thing. They destroy Blood Angel's homeworld. They destroy like the Ultramarines. They destroy like entire legions of guard. Like, and it's just like Termagants and stuff. It's not like, not even the big stuff.
yeah.
But in the game, like they just get shot by very easily and killed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think they also, yeah, speaking along the lines of rewrite, definitely in the sense of certain units where they had to like inject a unit with a stratagem just to make it work. Like the Blood of Ball, they were like, oh crap, some of this stuff just doesn't work at all anymore. So they gave the Exocrine the stay stationary strat. They gave the Haruspex reroll hits, like a 1 CP. So they basically were like, instead of having to change the profile or change the stats of the unit itself with the datasheet, they just went, well, here's a stratagem to try and make it better. They kind of decided like, oh, the Haruspex should have been weapon skill 3. Okay, we'll give you a stratagem that gives you reroll all your hits.
right. Yeah.
And it's still bad.
All right. From the chat, Nolius asks, is it better to have a versatile army or a highly focused army?
I like versatility. I think it allows you to tackle different situations. Unless your hyper focus is like shooting, sometimes that can pay off, but sometimes you get bopped by like decent terrain in a White Scars army that just like rolls you. So I think it's better to have at least one element in like every list. If you're a guard player, take a 8-man of Bulgrin or take some custodes in your army. If you even we've seen that with White Scar lists, where the White Scar list is like purely combat, and now people like actually we should probably put some Volkite Dreads in there and have some shooting. If you have 0 shooting, your opponent just goes, well, I never have to engage. I'll just keep backing away from your combat. So a little bit of everything is usually pretty nice.
Yeah, I personally like, well, I've never liked one-dimensional armies. Like the idea of playing Tau, it revolts me because they don't really operate in the
Says
fight
the
phase.
guy who played 90 Plague Bearers.
No, but here's the thing. They don't like even my Plague Bear army, I was able to operate in every phase. I had shooting, I had close combat, I had psychic powers, movement was a
I
big
know, I'm
part of
just
it.
giving you a hard time.
I know you are. But like my point is like both from a gameplay perspective, I find it a lot more interesting to be able to play in all 4 phases. So that means having and movement as well. Like that Plague Bear army was actually a movement army. Like it was very much about um like board control.
Positioning.
And for me, having shooting elements makes the game more interesting because it gives me options. And also just from like a fun perspective, I imagine like I remember playing old dwarf armies in fantasy, and they'd just sit there in their deployment zone and just shoot you for 4 turns, right? And like they would never move, right? Like so, and Tau obviously is very much like that. I don't like certain armies that like don't have psychic. I really like psychic phase. So I always like to play in lots of different phases, and I think also from as a player perspective, it's more fun overall when you get to do lots of things versus just like one thing a lot of. So personally, I like that. Sam Lemon asks from chat, shout out from Oz. Hey, Sam, thanks for tuning in. Last question is tips for studying other armies and learning how they play. Any tips for that, Alex?
I think it's knowing like the specific boogeymen from each army. And then after that, it's just knowing the right questions to ask. Like it's pretty hard to know everything about every. It's impossible to know everything about every army. The scope of the game is just massive. I think know your own army really well. Like really study your own army because it's not changing very rapidly, whereas the game keeps changing all the time. And then just know what questions to ask. Like, hey, this unit I've heard of. How fast does that move? Like, what's its actual threat range? Like, how much damage output can you do with like? Do you have any strats to boost that? What's your defensive? Like, I'm thinking of charging this unit into that. Do you have a response to that? Like, oh yeah, why have transhuman? Like, knowing those general questions to ask will save you a lot of having to like have all those statistics like on the top of your head.
Yeah, I would. One other suggestion I would give is make sure to check out websites, especially for competitive play, like 40kstats.com. That shows you the top four, basically the top four tournament winning lists in most events across the world, and it's updated fairly quickly. I think it's already been updated for this weekend. And then what I usually do is I'll go through the list and I'll kind of read it. And if there's anything that I don't recognize, I'm like, that's like a trait. Like say here's a winning list, and I notice that this character has a relic that I don't know what it does, or it has a warlord trait I don't know what it does. I'll go then look that up on like Wikipedia or in the Codex if I have it, and just understand, okay, how do these things work together, and why did he take this thing? So that next time I see it, I know that because what's going to happen is other people are going to see those lists, copy them, and that relic or warlord trait or whatever, or that unit is going to show up in other lists. And so for me to know what that thing does, I'll always make sure that I'm like trying to learn what is it that people are taking that's being successful, and then and then reading about it and saying, okay, this is something, because you don't need to read about the things that no one takes, right? So reading codex is like front to back is kind of pointless. What you want to be reading is like what are the two or three options or traits, whatever, that people actually take. And then just like Alex said, yeah, no, like, ask questions about, how far units can potentially move, if things can fall back and charge or fall back and shoot. Those are always questions. What things have fly? Like these are all like very basic questions that your opponent will generally answer. That can kind of give you a lot more insight on how to play against them. All right, last question. Brother Tobias asked, Jim, wasn't that why you ran the Contemptor in the Plague Bear list? Yeah, I ran the Contemptor because it gave me an option for horde killing at long range, and it was really good for killing vehicles. Like I could kill fire raptors, which are a big problem. The thing is, obviously on the shorter tables now, it's not as good, and obviously they've nerfed the Contemptor quite a bit. But it basically gave me, and especially in the ITC, it gave me the ability to get a turn one kill, which that list did not have because everything operated at around 24 inches. So the Contemptor gave me an ability to get a turn one kill, which is actually really huge in ITC to get a turn one kill. Obviously, we don't use those missions anymore, so it's probably not as viable. But I still took a unit of 20 to 30 horrors sometimes, and those actually had a lot of shooting power as well. But sometimes they wouldn't come until turn three. All right, that's all the questions. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, please make sure to like the channel, give it a big thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe as well if that is your fancy. And we will be back next Monday with another episode. Tuesday this week, we see Politics in Plastic. I have Dan Miner on as a local tournament overlord. We're going to be talking about the true cost of tournaments and how much they should actually cost. And then on Thursday, the Best Overall show is back. So thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Jim.
I'm Alex.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.